All right, guys, welcome to episode 8 of the Soulscast, probably the greatest Dark Souls podcast. Greatest, I don't really listen to any others, so I'm just
I second that.
This is the greatest.
No, it's definitely the best.
Today, it's Dark Souls versus Dark Souls 2, probably the most controversial topic right now when it comes to Dark Souls. I do think once 3 comes out, the next controversial topic is going to be 3 having combat too much like Bloodborne. That will be the next controversial topic. But anyway, again, I'm Adam Blue with Shane Norton. As always, every week, you can head to bluegamer.net if you'd like. I post when the podcast is up there, but we're on SoundCloud and YouTube, YouTube/bluegamer. Shane is also on Twitter as Calamite, but the L is a 1. Instagram, Calamite, the correct way. Also, check out his YouTube page. Just search for Shane Norton. You'll see a profile picture of a beer. And he's been posting boss battles lately. Bloodborne, and then Guacamelee, some retro stuff. You did some 3DS, right?
Yeah, I tried. I think I decided I'm not going to go that route of recording like from my phone, like my gameplay, and then uploading it. I did 2 boss battles from Link's Awakening that I'm playing on my 3DS, and then I did one from Final Fantasy X, and I decided the quality just is no good, and I don't know, it looks crappy. The video from the video on my TV even looks crappy, so I'm gonna stick to what I can do. I'm going to stick to what I can do on PS4, which right now is basically Bloodborne. I might be able to borrow Arkham Knight from my brother-in-law pretty soon, so
cool.
If that's the case, I'll definitely be uploading the boss battles in that game. So right now, it's just going to be PS4 stuff.
And you know what? It's taken me years to get to the point where I've got the best, setup. When I put that YouTube video up, I don't know if you saw it, where I kind of explained what I'm doing.
Yeah,
but
I
got
actually.
The Game Capture HD, and it's crazy how I have all my consoles plugged into my receiver, and then that goes to this HDMI server. But anyway, at the end of the day, it's going to the Elgato. Everything goes to the Elgato Game Capture HD.
Yeah.
And this makes it to where, I think I have to have my computer on with the software loaded. But at any time, I can hit record anytime I'm playing anything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Even PC, all I have to do is go to display settings and set the main monitor as the Elgato. It even says Elgato.
Yep,
and that's, that's the brand. And so I've been recording Dark Souls lately. And I wanted to get with that lately. I wanted to, before we dive into stuff, maybe just get a general idea of what we've been playing recently.
Yeah.
What have you been playing?
I started probably a month ago. On my 3DS, I started playing Link's Awakening DX, which is originally, a Game Boy game, and then they made it in color for the Game Boy Color, so I bought that from the Nintendo shop, like the virtual console. So I've been playing through that. I'm about halfway through it. I'm on the 5th dungeon out of 8, and I've been trying and stopping like a half dozen PS1 and PS2 games recently since my PS3 is dead. I'm sticking with Final Fantasy X, which I've never played through and beat, and I'm replaying Silent Hill 2 because I've been back on a Silent Hill kick, and my wife and I started Kingdom Hearts a few days ago, which I have played through and beat. I haven't played it in a very long time, so I think we'll be continuing it, but that's basically what I am playing at the moment.
Pretty cool. For me, I've been playing Demon Souls. Not as obsessively as I've been playing. As I played Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2, some of it really has to do with a Souls fatigue. I am feeling it a bit, but I'm not getting that need, but then I do feel it sometimes. So anyway, and I've been recording my Demon Souls captures. I'm actually going to have everything uploaded, everything I played, not just boss battles, but then I might make some separate boss battle videos, but, so far with Demon Souls, I kind of realized something with my last playthrough. I beat a boss, so I'm back at the Nexus and I pick another stone to go to another level. But then I went back and realized that the level actually keeps going.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that. So I was at this part, I'm having a tough time. I'm like, man, this stuff is tough. It was a spider boss.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And
yeah, he's
that
tough.
thing was like murdering me. At one point I got his health down really low, and I think it's actually doable. I really do where I'm at, but I was just like, man, there's something going on here. So I went back and I was like, wow, there's more to do, but it is great. I love the world, and it reminds me of Dark Souls, and we'll be talking about that. But
Yeah.
other than that, I'm also playing God of War Ascension, and I am uploading those videos as well. It will be like one a week. I like the God of War series, but it's really easy to get tired of them because it's the same thing all the time.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
This fourth one, I played it when it came out, got bored of it, and I'm now playing it again because I want to beat it, and it is fun. It's just it could get boring. This one's actually better than I thought. The further I'm getting into it and uploading all that. My videos, it's weird. It seems to be a little different when I do these Let's Plays. I don't talk too much because I'm really focusing. Every once in a while, I'll kind of give a little commentary.
Yeah.
I see it like that. It's like, okay, here's where you can watch the gameplay, and then, here's a little commentary. But anyway, also to add, I am playing through Dark Souls again on PC. I think I mentioned that. I'm at Anne Orlando. I just killed the Firekeeper killer in Anne Orlando right before.
Oh, yeah.
So either tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to be fighting Ornstein and Smo. That's nice. That's going to be happening here pretty soon.
Yeah.
But
good luck.
Man, I do love Dark Souls. But okay, let's get to this. And like I said, this is Dark Souls versus Dark Souls 2. So this is very controversial. I would just want to get the main point out of the way. Out of both games, which is the best?
Yeah, that's a very touchy subject because obviously it's every person is different, and the majority of people seem to think Dark Souls is superior, and I have no problem with people thinking that, and I thought that on occasion. I've said it a million times. It can change. My opinion, especially, can change on a daily basis. But I'm gonna have to give at least a slight nod to Dark Souls 2. I think it's just a little better than the first one. I don't even know if I can say better. I personally like it a little more. I'll say that. I like the combat. I like what they tweaked from the first game. I mentioned it in a couple episodes ago. It doesn't feel as arcadey being more maybe cartoony. It looks more realistic, even though it's still in a fantasy world with monsters and demons. The flow of everything looks more realistic, and I like the being able to legitimately wield dual wield, like use two weapons at the same time, which you can kind of do in Dark Souls, but not really because the game wasn't built for that.
What? That's funny you say that because my stepson was actually playing and he had two weapons in Dark Souls. I'm like, how do you have two weapons? I never realized that other slot for left hand, it shows a shield. So in my mind, that's just the shield hand. And then I didn't realize you can actually really dual wield. But
you can.
Also saying that it's not like it is in Dark Souls 2.
In Dark Souls 2, when you wield two weapons that are, I think that are similar, you can like go into the dual wield stance by holding, I think like triangle, and then you have like a different move set that is, that like caters to dual wielding weapons. In Dark Souls 1, it's more it's more like it's a lot more clunky. Whatever you have in your right hand will swing normally, and whatever is in your left hand is much more basic. I barely did anything with it, so I didn't.
Okay.
I'm not too familiar with how to do it, but you can do it. It's not that great. So I like, even though I haven't used it in Dark Souls 2, I like that they give you that capability. I do plan on starting a dual wield character whenever I get First Sin for PS4.
Yeah.
So, and finally, I'll say that even though the world is a lot different, it's not filled with shortcuts. It's not, it doesn't connect to itself, in really clever, interesting ways. I love the diversity of it. I love all the really, really unique, different areas that you can get, and nothing seems rushed. Like the end of Dark Souls was kind of rushed. I think we even talked about last week. Like Lost Eyes, Izalith, Demon Ruins are kind of crappy areas, and I don't feel like there's anything like that in Dark Souls 2. So those are my general opening thoughts about the two games.
Okay. And for me, I can say this, and it could change in the future, but right now, I think Dark Souls is the best. And I even started with that one first and went to Dark Souls 2. Immediately one after the other. For me, with Dark Souls, it's just I don't know how to explain it. It's really just the atmosphere. It's like that whole like not being able to teleport. It's scary. It's stressful, and I like that feeling I'm getting. The feeling I got when I first played Bloodborne that I now can't get in Bloodborne because I know everything about Bloodborne. Mm-hmm. And it could be, well, you know the game. Well, when I went back to Dark Souls on PC, I'm feeling it. Sense Fortress. Well, actually just getting through getting to Quelaag through what is it called? Blighttown.
Yeah.
Sense Fortress and Anor Londo are still just as stressful to me as they were when I first played it, because the bonfires are not near each other.
No.
There's setups. It's like it's not just like, oh, there's some enemies along the way. They set it up. They set up like, you're going to fight something here.
Yep.
You know? And so that's a feeling I did not get at all in Dark Souls 2. But even though I say Dark Souls is better, Dark Souls 2, and this is weird. Now that I've played Demon Souls, I can kind of maybe explain this better. Dark Souls 2 is a sequel to Dark Souls. It's like if you were to make a sequel to a Souls game, Dark Souls 2 is exactly how you would make a sequel to Dark Souls.
Yeah.
But if you look at from Demon Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne, each of these games are not sequels.
Yeah.
They're just spiritual successors. But they make the changes and the differences are made correctly for games that are not in the same series.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's like...
Yeah, I think it does.
It's like, I think it's unfair to almost, like, if you were to compare Dark Souls 2 to Bloodborne, it's like, well, Dark Souls 2 is a sequel to Dark Souls. It's taking Dark Souls and just further touching upon Dark Souls mechanics. It's not like, okay, this is a game with new mechanics.
Yeah.
You know, I think Dark Souls, and I've said this before, I think Dark Souls 2 is almost like, if you wanted to look at it that way, where, hey, this doesn't play with Dark Souls, well then, look at it as a Dark Souls side adventure, because it is more adventure-driven, in my opinion, since you can teleport so much. And,
yeah, sure.
So let's touch on that. That's the next subject, actually, we're going to get on, is the bonfire and fast travel. So, in Dark Souls, you didn't come across bonfires that often. It was a stressful adventure just to get to a bonfire, so you're like, oh, crap. Now I can refill my Estus. And then if I have, humanity, I can, have more than just 5. I can have 10. And Dark Souls 2 is more of, you get to a bonfire and then you're like, okay, there's some enemies to fight. Now I'm in a brand new area. Immediately, brand new area. Here's a bonfire. Which, it's two different things. So, what's your thoughts on that? How the bonfires work between both games?
Dark Souls 2 seems to have more bonfires. They're a little more liberal with them, and I really like what you said just a few minutes ago about Dark Souls being scary. I don't think that scariness, like of just thinking you're gonna die and just the oppressive atmosphere of the game, I don't think that exists quite so much in Dark Souls 2, and maybe part of that is because bonfires seem to be a little more plentiful. I mean, it's not like there's a bonfire every 100 feet. There's some stretches where you have to go a long ways.
Yeah. I will say real quick, when you're in the what is it called? Because it's been so long, the cursed forest area where you have to fight the scorpion boss. I do think that is kind of a trek because of the other hunter, I guess called Hunter from Bloodborne style characters then being cursed and then getting to the boss. That is, so Dark Souls 2 does have that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Sure. I think the Iron Keep, there's that bonfire at the very beginning at the bridge, and then you basically have to go through the entire rest of the level. But then there is a hidden bonfire right before the boss, the big giant dragon guy, which I can't seem to remember his name for some reason. The Iron King, whatever the hell his name is. Yeah, so there's still a bonfire right before the boss, which doesn't usually happen in Dark Souls, if I can remember correctly. I haven't played Dark Souls since, well, I played it right before Bloodborne came out, so I played it in February of this year. But again, my memory is trashy anyway. So I will say, as far as fast travel goes, you can't fast travel in Dark Souls until you're about midway through. Once you beat ONS, you get the Lord Vessel, so you can fast travel. And even then, you can't fast travel to every location. It's like a select. I mean, you can. There's a lot of them, but it's not like every single location. Like in Dark Souls 2, if you open up a new bonfire, then you can go there whenever you want. So even with the fast travel in the first game, you still have to do some trekking and some just running through to get where you need to go. And I like this. I liked it on my first playthrough, my second playthrough. As I'm more familiar with the game and I've played through it a couple times, and especially when I just recently played, I was trying to just run through real fast to get a couple things. It is so tedious, and I was just wishing I could just get to Anor Londo, get that Lord Vessel, and just fast travel everywhere. So I will say I like the fast travel right from the get-go in Dark Souls 2. I like it. It eliminates some of the tedium, and maybe that speaks to how the world in that game isn't as good as in Dark Souls, because if you run everywhere in Dark Souls 2, you're going to be running for a long, long time. But I don't mind it. I know there's a big outcry. A lot of people hate it. No, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, and so, that's the thing with Dark Souls. So, and I'll give my opinion on the whole bonfire fast travel thing. So, I'm playing it again, and this is not a New Game Plus. This is me playing the PC version because it has all the DLC.
Yeah.
And it actually is a pain when I was talking about the areas like Sense Fortress. There's a slightly hidden bonfire in Sense Fortress, but even going through Blighttown, there's still that shortcut, the back entrance.
Yeah.
Still a pain though, especially if you don't get the master key. Then if you get through the Drakes, Valley of the Drakes, you can go back there and you can get the key that allows you to shortcut. But anyway, that, and then even Anor Londo, even though it has, it does have quite a bit of bonfires there, but it's still a lot of work. Now, again, playing it over again, not a New Game Plus, it's a lot of work. In my opinion, I do think, when you play New Game Plus, you do carry over a lot of items that help you out. I do think the Lord Vessel should have been carried over from New Game Plus. That would be, I think that would be a good idea, just because a lot of the stuff you have to do again in New Game Plus, it's like you're already powerful enough to really get through some of that. All that is then is just kind of making someone go, I'll get to this later. Not everybody, but some people will be like, I don't feel like going through that again. But first time around, it really gave Dark Souls the feeling that it has. In Demon Souls, and I guess we're not really, comparing to Demon Souls, but Demon Souls, I don't know really how to explain. I probably need to wait when I get through more Demon Souls. But with Dark Souls 2, you're teleporting so much from the beginning, and there's still those instances where you do have to travel quite a bit and find, you unlock shortcuts in some ways.
Yeah.
So it's still there. It's just, I guess, again, what I was saying before is in Dark Souls, it's giving you that atmosphere. All that traveling you have to do. It's scary, it's hard, it's stressful. Dark Souls 2, tons of different locations. It's a little bit faster in that way where you're always doing something new and different. This is one of the points when it comes to both games where I prefer the atmosphere of Dark Souls because of the bonfire separation. But in Dark Souls 2, it really lends to its more adventurous play style. So I can't say one is worse than the other when it comes to that point. I would say
that's a great point, a great way to look at it. It caters to the more adventurous side of Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 is a little faster pace. It's certainly no Bloodborne, but it's a little bit faster. And it's funny because when I played Dark Souls for the first time, I didn't know there would be any kind of warping mechanic at all, because in Demon Souls there isn't. I mean, you can warp from the Archstones, but if you start World 1-1 at Boletaria Palace, you got to go through, kill Phalanx, and then you're at that next one where you can keep going. But if you want to go in between like the levels, you have to just start at basically the beginning. So in Dark Souls, I was expecting more of the same. So I went through, played it, and when I got the Lord Vessel and it said, "Oh, now you can warp between bonfires," my mind was blown. I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever. This is so awesome."
That makes me think. That makes me wish that I started with Demon Souls, because playing Demon Souls, I can really see a lot of Bloodborne, and something to think about is, okay, so Sony has this Japan studio that was working on Demon Souls with From Software, and and that's the same team that worked on Bloodborne. I almost feel like those games are very similar to each other. Now that I've played more Demon Souls, I really feel Bloodborne, even though this show is not about those games. That is actually a good episode for the future. I really do think, comparing Demon Souls and Bloodborne. There's a lot of little things there.
I cannot wait to get to Demon Souls.
Yeah, I can't wait to finish it so we can. That might take me a while, though. But in one of the Chalice dungeons, there is a Demon Souls dude that's laying there dead.
Yeah, he's got like the armor from, I think, like the cover of Demon Souls. I read that somewhere, and I thought that was really cool.
Okay. What's funny is that's how much I liked the series, even though I never played it. I recognized him when I saw it. I recognized it, and it's like I've never played Demon Souls for a little bit, but I just appreciated the series that much. But anyway, so let's move on. Bonfire, fast travel out of the way. Enemy types. Okay. What are your thoughts on the enemy types between the two games?
Enemy types, Dark Souls, definitely that's maybe the biggest advantage I see with the original over Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, as we've discussed and as I've said and I've probably written about in my blog when I maintain that, a lot of the enemies and bosses, we'll get to bosses later, a lot of the enemies are very humanoid, or they're knights, or like the undead, like Dregling kind of guys. So, they're kind of boring. There's some monsters and there's some cool looking stuff, but Dark Souls really has cool enemies, in spades. There's it has some of the humanoid guys. It's got some skeletons and your kind of run of the mill fantasy stuff, I guess. But I think Dark Souls, they're a lot more creative. The monsters, they're a lot of them are scarier. They look monstrous. They look terrifying, as opposed to like just another knight in armor with a halberd or a sword and a shield, or whatever the case may be. So as far as just that goes, Dark Souls definitely wins that all day long.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how I feel too. Especially just thinking about going from, depending on the order you play, but for me, it's like the trifecta of difficulty in Dark Souls is going from Blighttown to Sen's Fortress to Anor Londo.
Yeah,
you're in Blighttown and you get like the zombie guys, but then you got the little trolls shooting the poison darts at you, and then you've got
those guys are the worst.
Oh, I know. And then you got whatever those creatures are. I don't even know how to explain what it is. It's just some monster that it's down in the poison. A little bigger thing with maybe wings too, but I don't think they fly. But then you got mosquitoes running at you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, and then you got guys throwing rocks, giants throwing rocks at you.
Yep.
So it's like, there's that variety. And then the guys at the top of the backdoor Blighttown, those gigantic dudes that can just wipe you out. Then you get to Sen's and you get lizard guys at Sen's Fortress.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
And then you're in Anor Londo, and all of a sudden you're getting these giants with shields. And then you're getting the Black Knights. I think they're called the Black Knights, with the little horns on their heads.
Yep.
Type thing. And then there's a gargoyle. There's actually two gargoyles that you only have to kill once in Anor Londo. There's the main gargoyle and then one that's like armored. And then there's the other gargoyles that shoot lightning. So it's like, there was just so many different types of enemies that span those three areas that, playing Dark Souls 2, it was just, they were really all humanoid. I mean, I will give them some credit. So there's this Cyclops you could fight. It's like the first enemy you see in Dark Souls 2.
Yeah, that giant guy.
Yeah. But then they show up later on in the game, and I think no matter what level you're at, and it could just be how I play, but no matter what level you're at, they're hard.
Those guys are the worst. Yeah, they're awful.
And so there's this area, and the name escapes me. It's right before the main dragon area. It's the area where there's a dragon in the cage as the boss. It's, I think the area you liked, where it has like, I guess some guy was working, and it has a hallway of caged enemies.
Yeah. Aldius Keep, right?
Yeah.
The mansion, yeah.
So what's cool about that is I think that went against the whole thing where, Dark Souls 2 has so many humanoid enemies, but then you're at this level and it's got all the different crazy scary enemies locked up in these cages that a Cyclops will actually knock them all down, and if you die and restart, they're always out of their cages. There's the weird freaking, you think they're giant eyes, but they're actually not. Someone posted a picture, the guys, it looks like frogs that can curse you.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually not their eyes. They have these two tiny little eyes. I never noticed. But
no, it's awesome. It's a great detail.
Fighting those, you're fighting Cyclopses. There's magicians that are behind paintings and in some other rooms. I can't think, but there's a few other just random things. There's even some like fire dogs or something down in the, not fire dogs, just, I don't know, just down, like, that level was a good representation of, like, Dark Souls 2 has it's not like the developers, which is considered the B team, it's not like they couldn't do it. It looks like they just chose not to, because they did have the potential to have monsters if they wanted to. They just stuck with the more humanoid type, which, if that's what they wanted to do, and playing, the DLC, I meant to bring up something with the bonfires with the DLC. So I haven't played through all the DLC of Dark Souls 2, but I played each one, not through all the way, and they did introduce some cool new enemies. The bonfires there are actually very far apart in the DLC. Which
I will say, I'm thinking, I'm trying to think of one. I want to say all three of them, but at least maybe the Crown of the Sunken King, right before the final boss, there's a bonfire, which is nice because the final boss is pretty hard. So if you get killed, it's like a 5-second run. And then right next to the, I think final boss of the second one, I think the Crown of the Ivory King. Mm-hmm. There's a bonfire close to that boss as well. So they're pretty spaced out, but they're generous in putting bonfires pretty close to the bosses because those bosses are pretty hard.
Yeah, from what I saw so far, and I haven't beat the DLC because one would be really hard. I would just go to another one and I'd be like, wow, this is really hard, and I would just go to another one. And it's different. Which here's another point I wanted to bring up real quick. I know we were talking about enemies, but speaking of DLC, I'm doing it after I beat the last boss because Dark Souls 2 over Dark Souls 1 lets you play the game after the final boss. Which I think is a cool feature. Because with Dark Souls, you have two options. You can light the fire, go out the door, and then it ends the game. You can do New Game Plus. So with Dark Souls 2, you could continue. So you can get other items that you want to use for New Game Plus. And that's just a neat thing. But okay, so for enemies, anything else you wanted to bring up?
Dark Souls 2, they tend to throw more like mobs of enemies at you, as opposed to putting them in like unexpected and strategic places. They do that sometimes, but the whole game has more of a mob mentality kind of feel from the enemies, and then a lot of the boss battles are fighting multiple things. So I just wanted to say that's a difference. I don't necessarily mind it. I kind of prefer the way they did it in Dark Souls, but I'm not bent out of shape because they want to throw a bunch of enemies at me in Dark Souls 2.
Right.
They basically do that in Bloodborne. I mean, the beginning of the game where you're at, the big bonfire, there's like 10, 12, 14 townspeople there. So
yeah, I almost think that that's kind of a meta thing going on in Bloodborne where at a bonfire is probably more enemies than ever in a Souls game, and the game is just trying to say, because I think that's a brutal beginning to a Souls game, and it's like the developer saying, here's a bonfire. Like, here's the biggest bonfire in any Souls game, and it's filled with tons of enemies, from dogs to guys shooting at you, to mobs of enemies. And real quick, I want to say, like, one of my favorite enemies actually happens to be from a GIF I'd always see, GIF, whatever, I'd always see online, the Nope of the four-legged skeleton from the Catacombs.
Yep,
I think Catacombs are right after the Catacombs.
Tomb of the Giants.
Tomb of the Giants, yeah.
No, that thing's awesome.
I remember seeing that GIF and thinking that's hilarious, and then once I came across that, it was an amazing feeling, because one, it was scary. It was like, holy crap, because of the darkness, but then being able to take it out, it feels so rewarding, you know. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite enemies from that. I guess we'll move on. Leveling. So, and I want to say my thing real quick with leveling. Because I guess there's really not much to it. With Dark Souls 2, you leveled faster. At first I thought that was a concern, but then I realized leveling faster allows you to level up other attributes to allow you to do more. So, near the end of Dark Souls 2, I was using magic because I was able to put stats there.
Yeah.
Because my other stats wouldn't affect me much. So I had it to where in Dark Souls 2, I was putting magic on my sword. I was using a lot of pyromancy. When in Dark Souls, you don't level as fast. So it's like, if you want to focus on something, you have to pick something.
Yeah.
And I think that's all there's to it, in my opinion. To be honest, I prefer Dark Souls 2 leveling system.
Yeah, you know, I never thought about it quite like that because I was so rigid in my leveling that, you know, I was basically straight up probably strength and then...
Dexterity or something?
Yeah, strength or dexterity. I think strength. Vitality, I think, is the one that levels your health. Yeah. And then whatever levels stamina, endurance, or, you know, whatever. So I would, you know, put everything into that until I hit the so-called soft cap where it doesn't really, you know, you can't get any higher once you get to like 40 or 50. Yeah. I'd probably put a little bit into either intelligence or faith just to be able to use like the, you know, like to buff weapons, like magic weapon, whatever. Yeah. But I think I do prefer that. You definitely level up faster than in Dark Souls, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And then also with the leveling, as we maybe mentioned last week, I don't remember. It all just blends together. Yeah. You can get those respec items, and you can just completely redo your stats as many times as you want. So if you are trying to go for some kind of magic build and you realize it's just not for you, get one of those items, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Go back to those witches at the very beginning, or old hags, whatever they are, and then, you know, you're good to go. You can pump it into strength. You can do, you know, you can do like a faith build instead. You can try to go pyromancy. You can do dexterity. You know, whatever you want. So that's really nice, and I really like that. I think that's a good thing. Some people probably don't like it again because they might think that it makes the game a little easier because, you know, you can't really mess up your decisions if you want to go one way in Dark Souls. If you want to go one way and you either don't put you know, you don't do the right stats, or you realize that it's not for you, that playstyle, then, you know, you're basically screwed.
You know, and that's a good point, because my first thought is I don't like that. Like, I wouldn't mess with that. You know, I almost feel like that makes it easier. It's like, oh, this isn't working well, I'll just do all magic and just shoot things. But I think that gives people the opportunity to understand what kind of play style they want. What would make Dark Souls a lot more fun for them if they want to do things a different way, use a different type of weapon with different moves. It almost even makes me think, you know, even when I want to play without going to New Game Plus, playing in my new game with, you know, everything I'm unlocking, all the souls, just kind of respec it, see if I find something I like for New Game Plus. You know, I think that actually adds more replayability to the game than Dark Souls simply doing, you beat the game, start over again, New Game Plus. And then it's like, well, what do I do? You know, it's very interesting. So yeah, again, I'm giving it to Dark Souls 2 on the leveling. So I think this one's pretty big because I think this is your thing, and this is actually how I got into reading your blog when you were doing it, but bosses.
Yep.
Bosses are a big deal, and they've never really been a big deal to me. For me, it's more of the game, but then I've grown to appreciate bosses. What are your thoughts on bosses, Dark Souls versus Dark Souls 2?
I have been a lover of the video game boss battle for a long, long time, because I've played RPGs since I played Breath of Fire on the Super Nintendo. That was probably the real first turn-based RPG I played. So I've always liked them. They always have, you know, big, cool-looking bosses. So that was one thing that really got me when I started playing Demon Souls. That I realized, like, these bosses are really kick-ass, and they all have really cool names. They look awesome. They're, you know, most of them are pretty hard. So, you know, I've been obsessed with boss battles for a long time. Dark Souls, I think, has some incredible boss battles, and a couple duds. And I'll say Dark Souls 2 doesn't have as many incredible ones, and it has way more. But I don't know if I can say which bosses from any particular game I like better. I'll say the bosses I don't like from Dark Souls would be like, the Stray Demon, if you go back to the Undead Asylum, because it's the exact same battle as the Asylum Demon, so that's boring. The Demon Fire Sage is the same as that.
It's
but
funny you say that,
fire.
because I thought those guys were hard as hell, and the only way I could beat them is by hiding behind a pillar, like keeping a pillar in between, and then cheesing them. To me, I would cheese the bosses. They were hard as hell to me. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, I can see what you mean though, because it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I will say the Fire Sage one is probably the toughest of the three, because you're in a small room, and his attacks are the same, but they seem to do some pretty good damage. Most of the bosses in that area are kind of crappy, and you fight so many in a row. There's the Centipede Demon, who is just, I don't know, he looks cool, I guess, but he's like a throwaway boss. Even the Ceaseless Discharge is almost a throwaway boss, because it's such a weird battle. And
is that the one where it's the Demon Ruins and he's on the edge of the cliff?
Is it? Yeah, it's the Demon Ruins. You come down like a kind of a big hill, then you go across this almost like a bridge, and below you is all lava, and then you run up, and then you can either, he's just standing there. He's a gigantic monster. You can shoot him to activate him, or there's a set of armor you can grab right near him that will make him hostile towards you. So, and he's cool looking, but I don't know, it's a weird battle. It's not a great battle.
If that's the one I'm talking about, I remember it's on the side of a cliff, and he's over the cliff, but he's big where he's, coming up from the cliff and fighting you. And I just remember that being a boss that, if it's the same one, that I didn't even realize it was really a boss. I thought I just stumbled upon an enemy, and then I killed it, and I was like, all right, is that it? Is that the same one? Does that sound familiar? Because then, if you keep going and around, I think there's a chest or something you can grab.
There's a body that has an armor set. It's I think it's called the gold hemmed set. It's an all black robe. It's really cool. I used it on my character for a long time after I got it. And then if you grab remember, that will that will make him hostile.
Okay, yeah, because I just remember I can almost say I just don't remember, because it was such a. I remember I thought I came across a boss, but then it was so throwaway.
Yeah, he's kind of dumb.
Yeah. Okay.
His lore is pretty decent, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for me, I would say the Dark Souls bosses were just cooler in general. I do like though that Dark Souls 2 just had so many bosses. That was just kind of fun how there was a ton of bosses, even though most of them weren't too hard for me. Although I admit I did co-op in a bunch, but that was just because. Yeah, I think for some reason that's another thing I think that makes Dark Souls 2 a little different is I think co-op in that it was the game was made for co-op, and it was a lot more fun. There were so many areas you can choose to I'm going to do co-op here, I'm going to do co-op here, and it was really fun. And there's not any really standout bosses in Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls 1, that ONS boss battle was probably one of the greatest boss battles. Now, from what it sounds like, the DLC of Dark Souls has some amazing bosses, right?
Awesome bosses. So I guess I can actually say Dark Souls has better bosses. It has some duds and some clunkers. Beta Chaos, also horrible battle. I hate that battle. But if you take Dark Souls and then include the DLC, which has 4 bosses, I think they're all great bosses. Compared to Dark Souls 2, which has, I think I counted, because when I did my blog, I wrote about every single one. There's 32 bosses, plus 3 DLCs that have 3 bosses each, so that's another 9. And most of the DLC bosses, even though they're fun to fight and they're really hard, a lot of them are humanoid. So Dark Souls definitely wins in the boss category. It has a lot of big, cool-looking monsters, scary monsters. Yeah. Things that you wouldn't. It might sound dumb. Things you wouldn't want to see, because they're just big and terrifying. how scary is, just a big knight with a sword and a shield, which you see over and over again in Dark Souls 2. That being said, I think Pursuer is actually a great boss. I really like the Pursuer in Dark Souls 2. He looks cool, the way he floats. He has like that almost like cyborg like eye. I think that's great. I'll say all the monster bosses in Dark Souls 2 are probably my favorites, like the Demon of Song, the big giant frog with like the weird old man face, and then the Covetous Demon, which you just posted on YouTube very recently, yesterday or the day before. I love the look of that boss. He looks really cool. I like the Dark Lurker boss was really cool looking, and he was hard as hell to fight, but he was pretty fun. But a lot of the other ones, a lot of it's either, again, humanoids or knights, or like annoying mob bosses like the Royal Rat Authority. I don't like that boss at all. The Royal Rat Vanguard. Both those Royal Rat battles are kind of dumb. And then those, like the Ruined Sentinels. Those are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of stupid. The Throne Watcher and Throne Defender. They look cool, but again, it's just two knights that you got to fight. And then even the Gargoyle battle, which is kind of cool because it's a throwback. It's like a throwback to Dark Souls, which itself is kind of a throwback to Demon Souls, but that's not a bad one. Overall, overall, I'll say Dark Souls 2 has a few really, really cool bosses. Oh, and the Executioner's Chariot, the one that like goes around in a circle. That's a really cool boss.
Yeah, see, I like it when it does stuff like that. You don't. It's like you have to like really change your strategy. And just thinking real quick, like with Dark Souls, how it's like Capra Demon. That's like the first, like, in my opinion, the first like boss you really had to think about. Just because the one before that, it's what is the one before? Taurus Demon.
Yeah, Taurus Demon.
That one is just another demon on it's a monster on a bridge. There's an easy way to cheese him where you can make him jump off.
Yeah, I've seen that on YouTube. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I actually did it the other day just to test it out, and it was pretty easy. But you go Capra Demon, and then I kind of forget the order, but then there's like Gaping Dragon. Which,
he is awesome.
It's like totally different type of enemy from the Capra Demon. Capra Demon comes at you almost humanoid, but two dogs, small area. Then you get the Gaping Dragon, which is a giant area. This thing is flying around in the air. Admittedly, it's pretty easy, but it's just pretty neat. And then you get to what's her name? See if I can look that up real quick. Queen, Quelaag.
Yeah.
Or whatever her name is. That one I think is pretty hard actually. In general.
she's tough.
She has that AOE that kills you immediately. But I think that just goes to show like how Dark Souls has like so much variety. Like each boss is like completely different. But at the same time, Dark Souls 2 has a ton of bosses. So it's hard for me to say when it comes to bosses which game does it better. Dark Souls might have better bosses. But Dark Souls 2 is more of the adventure style fun if you want to fight a bunch of bosses. It gives you that option.
Yeah, if you like a lot of boss battles, Dark Souls 2 gives you a bunch. And like I said, there's some good ones. It's probably like maybe 50-50 on like really cool, great looking bosses and just boring ass knights. Dark Souls has, I'm trying to think if it really has any knight besides Ornstein and Smo and besides Gwyn at the end, who we didn't talk about, I don't think, at all last week, but I do not like that battle. I find it unbelievably difficult, and that's one of the few battles I need to like totally cheese, and not like parry him, which everyone seems to be doing. I can't parry him to save my life, so I basically have to like sit behind that rock that's to the left and like just go around with a shield and a spear and just poke at him through the rock. And
that's exactly what I did.
I don't care.
Had the Zweihander. I was behind the rock to the left, and pretty much just bam.
Yeah. There you go.
Just overhead, just hit him, and hey, that's a way to do it. I would love to know how to be a parry expert. Although I was getting it at some point in Demon Souls. Just got to practice more. But
yeah, it's all about practice, and I just don't have the patience to sit there for probably a couple hours at least to really get good. Where you see people run into the final Gwyn battle, and they're just they kill him in like 4 parries or something, and the battle lasts like 30 seconds. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could do that.
I watch Epic Name Bro, which Epic Name Bro, he's really good. He's
Yeah.
not like these crazy experts that like know how to do the crazy shit. But what's good about Epic Name Bro is he plays legitimately, but he just is good at the skill set given to you. So when I watch him, I do see him a lot parrying.
Yep.
Parrying, and I watch like, okay, where's the animation of that enemy when he's doing the parry? And, so that's cool to watch. Let's see, what is next? So, bosses. So, after bosses, you wanted to talk about, like the new game plus. So, the first, differences we talked about earlier is with Dark Souls, it just goes straight into a new game plus. With Dark Souls 2, it allows you to kind of hang out. You can go to a new game plus whenever you want, but also you can, with each bonfire, you can use a bonfire aesthetic to make that area a new game plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's additions though, like Dark Souls 2 does things differently with the new game pluses.
Yeah,
right?
Dark Souls 2 really hit it. I think hit it out of the park with New Game Plus. It's the only game of the 4 in the series that really, as far as I know, from what I remember, does some different stuff with with New Game Plus. And I don't want to spoil everything for you because I assume you'll probably play New Game Plus. I will say one thing with the Duke's Deer Freya battle, the big giant 2-headed spider on New Game Plus. When you're running, after you go through the encampment, there's like a kind of cliff where there's guys up above you and they push boulders down. If you remember that area, and then you run past, and then there's a door that leads, I think, to like the spider area. On New Game Plus, as you run through that area before the door, Freya will come up and attack you, and you can fight him there for a little bit.
Wow!
And if you, whatever damage you do to him there, if you don't die, and I'm trying to think, whatever damage you do to him there, and it's hard to hit him. But whatever damage you do to him there, when you get to him, that health will be gone already. So there's a couple things. That's
really cool.
There's a couple things really cool in the game like that are just really, really cool. And I won't say any more of them. Yeah. But that's a really cool one. So I really like what they do. Besides just making the enemies tougher, and you get more souls from killing the enemies. They change at least a handful of the boss battles where it's something kind of different, and that makes it really cool. So Dark Souls 2 is great in that area. And then I did mention a couple weeks ago in our Dark Souls 2 episode, there's some major boss battles, bosses that drop different items when you beat them. They drop different souls that directly tie back into Dark Souls lore, which is another really cool thing that they do with New Game Plus. So it's great to see that they can make it a not a different game, but they can add some cool things.
Yeah.
They can tie things back to Dark Souls. It's almost like the real true playthrough of Dark Souls 2 is the New Game Plus playthrough, because you get those pieces of lore and stuff that tie back to Dark Souls 1. And it's cooler. It's just there's more stuff. I like it. Dark Souls New Game Plus is fine. It's just harder enemies, more souls. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah, you know what though? I will at the same time say that works with Dark Souls 2 because of the teleporting. Thinking back, because I can only imagine if I'm playing Bloodborne and I'm doing a New Game Plus, and it takes more time to get to the next lamp, and then let's say something completely different happens, and I'm like, oh, although that is kind of cool. Like, I actually don't know where I stand with that. Thinking about it, here's the thing though. When I say I like Dark Souls 1 more, it's to the point to where I really have no desire to do New Game Plus in Dark Souls 2. I'm going to beat the DLC. I don't really feel like doing New Game Plus. That might change. It could be part of the Souls fatigue. That might change, but hearing that things are a little different, that's pretty cool. And also just thinking that I can carry over what I have and then even delve more into magic. I mean, thinking about how fast you level up, once I get to New Game Plus, I'm going to be able to do any crazy type of magic whenever I want, or just use some crazy new weapons. I think Dark Souls 2 really allows you to play differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then you mentioned a little bit about lore with Dark Souls 2, but let's talk about the lore of both games. I'm gonna just go, right out and say it. I don't get lore in these games. I just don't get it. I know you can read things. I forget names of people. I forget things. Although, again, I'm always reading up about stuff after the fact, and it's really interesting what I read. And I kind of want to read up really heavily on 1 and 2 before I play 3.
Yep.
So what are some... Oh, let me ask you actually a question, and you can spoil this for me if it's even a spoiler anymore. For anyone listening that doesn't want to listen to this, you can skip ahead. But how are 1 and 2 similar when it comes to lore? I don't get how they're connected. Do you?
I think I do, and I think I can answer that in hopefully less than like 10 minutes. No, I didn't find out myself because I'm really bad at that kind of stuff. For Dark Souls 1, I mainly just watched probably all of Epic Name Bro's lore videos back in, again, 2011, I think. They were great, very, very informative, very interesting. He's just a great guy to listen to.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls 2, I did a lot of reading on the Giant Bomb forums, which was all like, fans. So that's kind of where I got it from. And it's been a couple years on both. But essentially, Dark Souls 2 ties into Dark Souls with... The whole game is about... Dark Souls 2, the whole game is about cycles. Cycles repeating and repeating. There's some dialogue in the game spoken by... I don't remember his name. He's like a magician that you can free at the top of... what is it, Lost Bastille or something like that, where you
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. He's the guy where you can like do stuff with souls, like give him souls or something. Yeah.
He has some dialogue that says something about like kingdoms have been here before and they've fallen and new kingdoms have been put in their place, and it's been theorized that the land of Drang Lake is on where Lordran from Dark Souls used to be. Like Lordran was there, and it fell over thousands of years, and they built Drang Lake on top of it. I don't know if that's actually true, but if you said you didn't care about the spoilers, I will say Dark Souls 2, the items you get from the bosses in New Game Plus, they're essentially like the boss souls from some of the main bosses in Dark Souls. Like you get, they're not called the same, but you essentially can get Nito's soul. Jesus, now I'm gonna try to remember. I think the Chaos Witch's soul. I think you can get Gwyn's soul and maybe Seath's or something like that. So that's kind of a tie-in. Another tie-in that I particularly like, and I don't know how 100% true this is. The Lost Sinner you fight.
Yeah.
Who is a girl, by the way, which I did not know for a while, but that is a female. The first time you fight her, there's like a cutscene where there's like a little bug that crawls into her mask, and the little bug, people have theorized, is that bug that's inside the Bed of Chaos. When you get through and you have to hit him to kill him, because it looks very, very similar. So it's kind of like, whereas the theme of the game is cycles. So bosses from Dark Souls 1 have died, but their souls, quote unquote, are inhabiting new bosses in this game, and kingdoms are built and destroyed and built on top of, and you can't do anything about it. It's just one cycle after another, and no matter what you do, you can't change it, which is why I think there's no option for various endings of Dark Souls 2. It's just you kill Nishandra, you sit on the throne, and then that's it. So that is essentially how they connect. I know that was probably a lot of rambling, but everything that happened all right, basically everything that happened in Dark Souls keeps happening and happening and happening, just to new people and new enemies and new bosses. But it's
Yeah.
all just one cycle that keeps happening. And it seems like Dark Souls 3 is going to somehow close that cycle where it doesn't happen anymore. And I'm very, very intrigued with the stuff they're
Okay.
going to do with Dark Souls 3. And we can obviously get a lot more into that when, more stuff comes out. But it seems like it might be really, really, really cool. So that's basically what I have with lore.
Okay, and yeah, and it sounds like in Dark Souls 1 they were kind of talking about the same things, how the whole, like, souls, invaded, phantoms, all that, those are different timelines or different
Yeah.
cycles, and then you're seeing people from different cycles be in that place. Yeah, it's cool stuff. I mean, I think for anyone listening, if you really want to get a grasp on lore or get ideas, and a lot of it is guesses. A lot of it is just
A lot of it is definitely.
But then the community will agree on points. And you can check out Reddit, check out Epic Name Bro. There's a few other people that you can. I'm sure if you just search Dark Souls lore on Google, you'll find it. I can't say I'm an expert on it. To me, it's the gameplay that really sells the game for me. But lore is at an added extra, and I think Bloodborne probably has the best lore in my opinion out of all the games.
I'm pretty sure I definitely agree with that. I'm not too much into the Bloodborne lore yet, but what you've told me just in the podcast and a few things I've read, I think Bloodborne has the best lore and story of the 4 games so far.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go off on another thing, but just the fact that Chalice dungeons are part of the story.
Yeah.
It's part of the whole lore.
Yeah, it's real cool.
Okay, well, yeah, we've hit an hour here, but I don't know if we want to touch on some other things that we haven't yet about Dark Souls versus Dark Souls 2. Anything you can think of?
Off the top of my head, right before we started, or right as we started, there was something I really wanted to mention, and I was just about to write it down, and then I didn't write it down, and I don't remember what the hell it was.
Let's see, does it have to do with demon souls, weapons, armor? What were we talking about? Atmosphere, bonfires.
All right, well, you know what? I will talk about weapons for a sec, I guess.
Okay, sure.
Dark Souls 2 probably has more weapons than Dark Souls. I don't know the official count, but Dark Souls 2 seems to have more of everything compared to the first game, so it probably has more weapons. And like I said, I like the dual-wield capabilities, so I like a lot of the weapons in Dark Souls 2. I like that some of the more iconic ones from the first game carried over, so that's pretty cool. I like... boy. Now this is really just spitballing, so this is going to make for fascinating radio, I'm sure. All right, I can't think of anything just right off the top of my head now without sitting here for 15 minutes going...
Well, real quick, with weapons, I will say, yeah, Dark Souls 2 seem to have a lot more, but I think it's really hard to... The game doesn't really... It makes it hard for the opportunity to try everything and see what works for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times you're really going to you're going to look at the stats and be like, okay, this is where I am in the game. I need something that does at least this amount of damage. I need something that's going to be at least this on my load. I'm just going to stick with this. And, playing Dark Souls 1, I used a Zweihander last time. Went through the whole game with it. This time, the Claymore, and the Claymore is actually a lot more brutal than the Zweihander. Is actually giving me a lot more options with the Zweihander. I mean, with the Claymore, I can do stabs, or I could do swipes, which has been helping me out. It's it's one of those things where I guess it's just the core concept of Dark Souls is you just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You just got to take a chance on a weapon. You got to be like, you know what? Let me just chance this weapon and see if I can get to liking it. I think that's the same with armor. I almost think in general armor doesn't make as big of a deal as it seems like on the surface, or when it comes to other like RPGs. It almost seems like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer being quicker or not? I really think that's what it boils down to a lot.
Yeah, that's almost what it comes down to. It's funny because you may have seen, like, people call it, like, when they're talking about armor, they call it, like, fashion souls. Essentially just whatever you think looks the coolest or looks the best is what you can use.
Yeah.
And that's, like, generally what I've read online. Like, whatever you think looks cool unless there's something obviously you need, like maybe something that has like real high, I don't know, poison damage or something that's really light. But it matters, but like you said, compared to other RPGs, it probably isn't that big of a deal. And for Bloodborne especially, I don't think it makes any difference at all. Bloodborne is just aesthetically whatever looks cool, that's what you're going with. And
I think there might be sometimes specific areas, like I know, depending on like arcane defense, I think in Bloodborne for a boss or two, it might be better to wear like the white church robes or whatever. I know when I'm playing Dark Souls and I'm in Blighttown at the bottom in the poison, it's better to have on the thief or I forget what it's called, the black or thief robes, because it has better poison defense. But then it's only those specific times. When I played Dark Souls, I use the Elite Knight armor because I think that's kind of like the poster armor of the game, the Elite Knight armor. So I wanted to be faster. So with this next playthrough, and because I'm better, I'm more of a seasoned now, even though it's not even been a year that I've been playing these games, a seasoned Souls gamer, I don't use helmet or gloves just so I could be faster. It's like I don't need that extra armor because I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then I got this new ring just recently in Anne Orlando, and I think you get it from when you kill that fire seeker killer. But it's the ring that boosts up my load, so I have the full armor. And I'm only wearing the Elite Knight armor because that just is the Dark Souls armor. Same thing happened with Dark Souls 2. I focused on getting the Farum armor set.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is the poster armor. That's what you see on the cover.
Yeah.
That just has the Dark Souls 2 feel to it. That might seem very boring, but to me, it's like I want to be engrossed in Souls, and so that's like using the armor on the cover, armor that represents the game, is Souls to me.
No, yeah, that's fine. And that armor looks really cool anyway, with like the big fur, and that one has a cape, I think. Yeah,
I think it has, the leggings like have a cape.
Okay.
In a way, yeah. Where the bottom half has that little like cape going on, and it has the fur, it has the thing on the top of the helmet.
Oh yeah,
that kind of sticks up a little bit. Yeah, it just, and it's cool because it has like that green, the green and silver, which is not a normal color scheme.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to armor and weapons in these games, I don't think one does it better than the other. I almost feel like the games in general could be doing better with armor.
Probably. Yeah.
But, and I really think after playing the games, it's weird what Bloodborne did, where it only had a few things and they don't really do much, you know?
Yeah,
that was kind of weird.
It was weird. It kind of made sense with their scaling back of the weapons and, things like that.
Yeah.
So it made sense. I guess it made sense to have the armor or clothing, attire, whatever the hell it's called, not be as, integral to the game.
But I guess at the same time, when you're talking about armor, I mean, if you really think about what they would do, it's like everyone's going to fight the same boss. This boss is going to have the same output when it comes to attack power. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's all going to have to be pretty similar or close to similar.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, people are going to wear things that are just going to, like, kill them or be too powerful. You don't want it to where everyone's always, like, rushing. They always play through. Let's say they play the game on purpose. Like, I'm always going to go here first no matter what to get the best armor in the game.
Yep.
And then I'll do everything else. I think they try to avoid that,
Yeah.
And I think that kind of makes sense in a ways. And that's actually the same with the weapons, because even if I can run and get the Zweihander early in the graveyard with the skeletons, I can also go behind the dragon on the bridge to the Sunlight Altar, I think it's called, and get the Claymore. Either one is fine.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that's a balance that I don't think any game developer can say that they've been able to solve, other than making it to where it makes the game too easy. They make something that's so powerful, you get that first. I mean, I will say in Demon's Souls, I did this inadvertently, and then it reminded me of reading it years ago, where because I thought I was done with the first place, I went to do another level, and I got this ring that when I'm in soul form, I have more health.
Oh yeah, yep.
Which I'm like, wait a minute, I remember reading about this. This is perfect. So
yeah,
then
that's like essential.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, no, I think that's it for this episode. I think Dark Souls 1 and 2, that can be debated forever.
Probably.
The verses, again, it's really hard to say. I mean, I can just end personally with me saying I am willing to play Dark Souls over again on New Game and not New Game Plus. I'm doing it over again on a different console. While with Dark Souls 2, not in a rush to even do New Game Plus.
Okay.
So that's just how I feel.
I think that's fair. And I think that's fine. I haven't played either one really in a while. When I played Dark Souls recently, I was just running through as fast as I could. I'd love to sit down and start a new game on Dark Souls, and I definitely plan on doing that with Dark Souls 2 when I get Scholar of the First Sin for PS4, whenever that will be. I'm gonna start just new game with both of them, and Dark Souls, go through new game, go through the DLC again, and same with Dark Souls 2, I'll go through the DLC. Next time I play them will probably just be play them once, and I won't play the New Game Plus on them. So it's tough to say. It's almost something that it's almost something that I can't answer, because I almost want to say maybe I like Dark Souls better, actually, even though I just spent fucking 70 minutes talking about Dark Souls 2 and how I like it better. So
yeah, that's hard. I mean, at the end of the day, the real answer of it is it's just awesome games in general.
Yep.
It's like, but okay then. That'll be it for Dark Souls vs. Dark Souls 2, guys. Thanks for listening in. Leave some comments if you'd like. Tell us how we're wrong. That's always fun. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye-bye.